Welcome to episode 297 of Backpacking America. I'm here with Fred Hicks, who is the Assistant Vice President of IT at Adelphi University.
That's correct.
And I am very excited to talk about cybersecurity today. In the wake of a not cyber attack, but cyber mishap that happened the last week that delayed a lot of Delta flights and other airlines, as well as hospitals and major corporations. And it kind of dovetails into the wider topic of cybersecurity in general in this new age. And I just want to say welcome, and I'm looking forward to this.
Great. Thanks for having me back.
You're very welcome. So first off, tell us a little bit about the last week. Like, what really happened?
So, you see a lot of stuff on the news. Microsoft has gone down. This cyber attack or cyber event. I mean, to put it straight, what happened was there's an application called Crowdstrike that you run on your computer. It's an antivirus program. It's on millions of computers. It's very popular in the corporate world. And they pushed out a bad update. So virus definition, a new piece of their software. It's very common. Everyone who runs antivirus will get definitions every day or every few days. They push a bad config, and they didn't do good quality control on the update, and it got sent out to millions of computers. And then when the computers rebooted, they blue screened of death.
Oh, wow.
Just basically went offline. So every industry, like you were just saying, I was affected by a little bit. I was traveling on Delta the day that it decided to break the internet. And while I didn't suffer greatly, a lot of people did. A lot of flights were canceled. Some people are still affected by it. They're just stranded for a week. Lost thousands of dollars in travel. So it was a big event. So
how does that get prevented? I mean, is this just like something that you can't really
talk about prevention? So this is going to be prevalent in a lot of what you do. Is when you're trying to see how vulnerable you are to cyber attacks or whatever. It's a risk assessment. So you have to understand how an application like Crowdstrike is structured, right? It's an application you load on your computer, probably centrally controlled. However, it's connected to their servers in their data center, right? Because it delivers what they call threat intelligence. So threat intelligence is basically corporations will gather all of this information on the internet, cyber attacks, vectors, virus definitions, and then they formulate it into packages that go down to your computer and update it. Right? The only way your computer knows how to defend against something is if it knows about it. So that threat intelligence is updated frequently. Bad threat intelligence update is what got pushed to these computers. So, you have to know that your computer is reliant on a feed from the internet. And if that goes bad, gets hacked, gets owned, or just misconfigured, you're going to be affected. So you have to have some sort of continuity plan in place. How do you get around it? Unfortunately, the only way to repair these situations that happened was someone had to physically touch those computers. So your endpoint support guy, the guy who's actually in the trenches, had to visit and touch each one of these computers. And companies that have remote employees, who have outsourced employees, it's why it took so long to get things back up and running. There just weren't enough guys, especially when it happened on a Friday, around to go in and fix things. So that's why you had pretty much an extended outage over a weekend.
Wow. Do you think it might have been, could it have been like an intentional thing, or was it just like an oversight?
I would say it was probably a failure of several components of doing quality assurance checks before they sent it out. I don't think it was malicious. There was nothing in the news to indicate that. I think it was a bad system file that got pushed. And during the quality testing, you're supposed to run things in a development environment and in a lot of configuration before you sent it out. And for some reason, that chain of checks just failed.
Oh, I see.
So, I mean,
it happens.
It does. It does. And it's not just with, cybersecurity infrastructure. Companies like Amazon, Google, it happens to them too. Sometimes you'll see half the internet go out. You can't get on Netflix or Facebook. All that stuff is hosted in something called Amazon AWS, Amazon Web Services. And frequently they do a bad config and the service can't talk to the internet and brings all those things down. It's not intentional. It's a mistake. And that happens quite a bit. Not often, but it happens enough.
I see. Now, this kind of leads me into my next point that I put here, and more just on the changes of cybersecurity, because there's checks and balances, but how have changes in cybersecurity approaches since 9/11 And since the renewed China-US tensions changed, like what are those changes between those two periods?
So pretty broad,
Right.
speaking at the rapid pace of development of cybersecurity and computers. But some of the main changes that have happened was, after 9/11, there was a big shift in protecting physical assets, like the physicality of a computer, like make sure, your computers and stuff are behind a locked door, that their access to them are secure, to, things are hyper connected now, right? The internet connects almost all of us. So it went from a physical kind of mindset to a cyber mindset, right? How are things connected? How do they communicate? And the communications, right, that carry the messages, the bad stuff. How do you inspect that? How do you keep that in mind? And so there is a lot of monitoring that got put in place, like the Patriot Act, right? The government was doing mass surveillance on communications, phone calls, communications of computers between networks. That's, that was the first thing, was intercepting internet traffic and telephone calls to be inspected for keywords and signatures and looking, just threat intelligence again. So that's, main shift was people actually starting to, being concerned about, we're connected to the global community, and the data that's going from United States to China to the Middle East, all that stuff now is a concern. And now there's systems put in place to monitor it and look for signatures.
In a way, it's like the first search engine optimization.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever do your own, your research on it, there's a program, and this existed before 9/11, but there's a program that the government put in place called Carnivore. And what that would do was monitor the internet and do keyword searches in your email. So there was like a small holistic movement of people that wanted to kind of trip up the algorithm. So they started putting, keywords as their signature at the bottom of the email. Words I won't say, but, like things that should be, making flags go off, and they were just doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Because it was monitoring all of people's email going through the internet, looking for keywords and conversations.
Wow.
So, and that also led to adoption of mass encryption, right? So everything...
Right.
If you were doing business on the internet during the late 90s, early 2000s, were websites encrypted? Maybe. But now, if you're not encrypted, like Chrome won't even load your website.
Really?
And Firefox won't even load your website. You could bypass. You could say, I know what I'm doing, and you let me through. But if you're not encrypted, they won't let you have a conversation with that website.
No kidding.
So, yeah, everything's wrapped.
Well, the privacy movement as well took off in the post 9/11 era, when it came out that the DHS and NSA was monitoring everyday Americans.
Yep.
So there was a big movement to download Tor to access the dark web, and that led to a whole other craziness and plethora of things. What started as a holistic movement to just have privacy ended up becoming, there's a double-edged sword.
Sure.
With freedom comes lack of security.
Sure.
And it's just quite interesting. Even now we have Signal, we have Snapchat, we have WhatsApp, we have Telegram, we have all Proton Mail. We have all these different encrypted services that people can have access to, and now security is the name of the game. It used to be a countercultural spite to the security state, and now it's common practice. Everyone has encryption. Even iMessage is encrypted now.
Yeah. You have to be. I mean, it's so prevalent, and it's a good thing. But it's more consumer focused, right?
Yeah.
So it's to protect my messages between me and my family. It's to protect the bank transaction, my credit card when I'm buying things on Amazon. But when you're talking about, state actors or whatever you want to call it, there's still ways to circumvent that. It protect me and you, but depending on the scale, I look at it like this: my data's out there, right? I'm a drop in the bucket with the billions and billions of records that are out there. So unless someone's focusing on me individually, I'm just lost in a sea of bits.
I see. I mean, well, that's the thing too. You have to have a reason to be searched on. Most people, when they're going for these massive attacks, they just want data.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily care about the people involved. It's more what data set can I get from these groups of individuals in this area code or whatever.
Right. And you're absolutely right. But it also depends on what your outcome is. Like, what do you want? Do you want to make money? Do you want to? Is it political? Is a lot of these cyber attacks? It's getting in to load ransomware. Right. So you're a small outfit, someone gets on your computers, ransomwares, what's it worth it to you? Is it worth about $3,500 in Bitcoin to get your assets back? It might be, Suffolk County got hit, and, what's it worth to them? $5 million? Sony got hit, back a couple of years ago, and they got all their data. They got pay rates of actors. They got video games. They got internal memos. They got digital assets, and Sony wasn't just doing really good practice, with cyber protection.
So in that situation, do people pay the ransom, like those major companies and governments, or do they? The FBI's advisement is to not pay it, but a lot of the bigger companies, I think they do. Really?
Because if you're paying $5 million to get your data back, get the decryption key and get it all back, I mean, that's a drop in the bucket when you're making billions and billions of dollars.
Okay.
But that's also motivation. They'll come back.
Yeah, they will.
And they'll do it again.
You see, my whole line of thinking would be like, I'll pay if I had $5 million, I'd be like, let me hire some private investigators and find where they are. You know what I mean? That's my line of thinking. But then again, I'm not in that position. I wouldn't know what to do if that was,
Right. And even if you did that, right, and you found out where they were, what are you going to do? They're going to be overseas in another country.
Sure.
They're going to be almost untouchable if their identities aren't anonymous, right? But it comes to economics of scale, right?
Right.
$3,500 is pretty affordable, to maybe a mid-sized business. So yeah, you pay it, you get it back, or you know what, you wait, because the tools that they use are constantly under scrutiny. Right. It's these kind of things are like almost an arms race, like a Cold War arms race. Right. So they'll use a tool set that will encrypt your data and then they'll hold it ransom. But like the FBI, they've got, people who decompile that code. And so if they're using a slightly older application or virus to do that with your data, the decryption key could be public. You could just be like, see you later. I'm going to get my data back on my own. So that happens too. So it really depends, like, who they are, who their victims are, and what tool they've used. So
is this like the only way these non-state cyber attackers, cyber hackers use their abilities, or what other ways do they really wreak havoc on the economy and our national defense?
I look at the motivations. I kind of put them in separate buckets, right? So you're going to have hacker groups that are financially motivated. They'll come in and they'll disable an organization and they'll hold it hostage. They'll do that for money. And then there are those that will do it for political reasons, right? I don't agree with your message. We're going to take, your platform offline so you can't spread, whatever, your messages, things like that. And then there's things between countries, right? So, I had mentioned between China and the United States. So, for like the last decade and a half, Chinese hackers or state-sponsored hackers, whatever you want to call it, they were going after critical United States infrastructure, right? If they could get backdoors into like power plants and water plants and, government installations. And it's not just that they'll focus on that, but they'll go after the private sector, right? It's not just government infrastructure that looking at, but we live in a capitalistic society, right? So what's the one thing that we do really well? We innovate new products, right? So intellectual property, patents, things, they're after that because that makes money. That's cutting edge technology.
Look at Temu, man.
Yeah.
Look at Temu. The same electric bike from Temu is $300 to $500 cheaper than on Amazon, right, from an American
and you
product.
look at them and to the layman, you can't tell the difference, right? It might break a little bit sooner. It might be slightly less build quality, but that might be acceptable to some people. You're right. They're identical, right? The Chinese manufacturers do not care about copyright. I buy a lot of products off of AliExpress and all over is copyrighted material.
Okay.
And it's just, what they'll do is when they get noticed, they'll blur the image. So you can still find all that stuff there. So intellectual property, they'll go after research institutions like universities. That's where patents are. That's where intellectual property is. So they'll go after anything. So it's
Well,
pretty open.
someone said something very interesting on I believe it was Instagram Reels or TikTok or something, and they said that the Chinese are not as advanced as we think they are. And I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And he said they're very good at stealing things. They don't innovate; they reverse engineer. So he made a very good point. He's like, if you go to China and you drive down roads, you won't see telephone wires. And you'll see a lot of cell phones, but you won't see telephone wires. See, we have backups. We have landlines where if we had a major catastrophe with our cell phone services, we'd default back to landlines. They don't have that. They are more focused on catching up to the West than out innovating the West.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I'd mostly agree with that.
Yeah.
Like I said, because we're a capitalistic society, right? Our focus on innovation of products, right? I got an iPhone 15 in my pocket, right? My last model phone was an iPhone 11. That's 4 generations. That's only a few years. But the leaps and bounds in the design and the capabilities, right? Because, our technology is designed for planned obsolescence, right? You get 2 years out of that cell phone. It should really last you about 5 years, if not more. But because the consumer dollar is driving what's coming next, what's the greatest thing coming next year, you always have to have a new design. You have to have new technology built into it. So capitalist companies, they innovate really fast, and that technology.
Even Marx said so.
Yeah.
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 Well, and it's funny. And this is just to go over the theory is that, Marx said you have to develop, and even Lenin, you have to develop society capitalistically before you can revert to a lower stage socialist or higher stage socialist society to then, build off of the successes of capitalism. Because they even did acknowledge that capitalism breeds innovation. Mm-hmm. It's just, and that's where that's what's very interesting about societies like China, where they have the revolution, they have the whatever, that everyone can eat, everyone has housing, but they lost that innovative quality that capitalism naturally has. Because now you're at this point in your society, but you need to go backwards to go forwards. And that's what they're grappling with as a society. And they're doing well, but how well? That's the thing. It's, people always make a projection about the threat of China, but their Navy technology is subpar. It's stuck in the 90s. They have hypersonic missiles, sure, but they're barely hypersonic missiles. It's like getting a 66 on your math test and the failure rate is 65. You know what I mean? You passed, but by what?
Right. And if you take a look at how much those countries spend, right? If you take a look at the top 3 or 4 countries that spend on their military, right? How far out does the United States outpace those countries?
Right.
A lot. I mean, a lot. So their population is, 4 times plus what ours is. So they could overwhelm us with numbers. But as far as military assets and technology, we have the superior technology in that regard. Not that that's really a threat, but we have better military technology. So this happened, I don't know, 10 or so years ago, and I can't cite the exact thing, but there was a United States plane, like a military plane with a lot of surveillance technology in it, and it had to do emergency landing on Chinese soil or something. They captured it, and they were not going to return it. They were going to get all of the military secrets that they can out of it. Again, it's a mindset of capturing Western technology, high tech stuff, military secrets, and that's a motivation behind a lot of it. Just to get intellectual property.
Yeah. And that's, it's actually funny with TikTok, they actually innovated social media to where Meta had to catch up and say, okay, well, now Reels are trending. Now we have to beat TikTok now. But, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what we do. Oh, wow, you made a good consumer product. Here's your cookie. But there's still many other things that China has to actually innovate to really be considered a first world threat. And that's something that I wanted to kind of dovetail into this next point where the future of cybersecurity, depending on whether America continues to pursue interventionist policies or isolationist policies in the world stage, if depending on the outcome that we take in the next 4 to 8 years, break that down for me. Like, what do you think cybersecurity will look like if we pursue an isolationist approach versus an interventionist approach?
I mean, I personally feel that we're probably taking an interventionist approach. I mean, that's ever since World War II. That's just been our method, right? World police. I mean, we are, right? Yeah. There's a conflict. We're involved in somehow. So I think from a cybersecurity standpoint, we'll probably take more of an active role. And there's education that's rapidly developing to train cybersecurity professionals, whether it's through traditional education means, or it's through government-sponsored programs, or it's through even the private sector, right? They have their own methods of, obtaining certificate training, to become a cybersecurity expert. So there's, I think, globally almost 4 million available jobs in the cybersecurity field that they're struggling to fill. So that's going to be like one of the highly developed places of employment or sectors of employment, for the next couple of years. So you have to get a really good base of people who have capability of not just, running the cybersecurity infrastructure, but innovating it. And then, going out and being, let me backtrack a little bit, right? So you're either defensive on your posture or you're offensive in your posture, right? So you have, you could react to an event, or you could be proactive and prevent the event, right? So I see us being more proactive in preventing the event. And it's things like threat intelligence, right? Looking for patterns in what's happening in the deep packets that run the internet. So when someone's going to run like a botnet to do DDoS against your site, you're going to start picking that up early, and then you're going to put preventive measures in place. You're going to shut down, like the FBI is working with, international police organizations to take down hacker groups before they strike on something, right? Because they're monitoring them, looking at the chatter, what they're planning next. So you see that sometimes, like the FBI has took down a hacker ring in Western Europe. How do they do that? Well, through threat intelligence. They have analysts looking at it. They make a determination and they go straight first. So I think you're going to see more of that.
Really?
I don't think we're going to be defensive. I think we're going to be very offensive.
Very offensive. I see. And, that makes sense. I just because I see like the two trends in politics right now where, if we go interventionist on everything, but maybe I'm looking at it too black and white. Now you said there's 4 million jobs in cybersecurity that are unfilled.
Yep.
Why is that?
Why is that? So it's technology develops rapidly, right? And then the need for people to go in and support that technology infrastructure, it develops really so fast that the conventional pipelines of getting people, one, interested in doing it for a living, trained to do it effectively, and then, send them out to the world, can't keep pace, right? So it's like when the internet, like you talk about the 2000.com boom, right? When the internet exploded in the late 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't enough technologists at that point to support installing computers, installing servers, getting all connected and running. It's the same thing. There's not enough cybersecurity specialists for this hyperconverged. Everything's got fiber optic to the premise, running multi-gigabit links. You can connect to any node on the internet on the world, like just hyper-connected. There's not enough people. It grew so fast that the conventional educational pipelines just couldn't keep up with it. And social informational systems pop up that are different. So sometimes laws can't keep up with the pace of technology. Like you mentioned TikTok, right? It was a Chinese sponsored application, right?
Run by Tencent, which is also run by the Communist Party.
Sure. Yeah. So how long did it take for the United States government to start putting policies in place?
3 years?
Yeah. I mean, years. You're talking years, right? And, so I remember seeing a sign in New York City a while back. It was just a sign on the street corner. And it just said, New York police do not run TikTok on your city issued phone. Oh, okay. Because they made that policy, but it wasn't immediate. It took time for them to analyze and, and say that this is a threat, that they could pick what goes across it. Like it'll spy on other things on your phone. That's true. Like these apps will look at whatever you're doing. And
there was a congressman. His daughter had TikTok on her iPad, and he got they basically contacted him and said, "We know what's up. We've listened to you, and we know what you're planning. We don't like it." Swear to God. And I saw it on the news a while ago. I was like, wow, that's scary. That's when all this started coming out. And then the FBI actually arrested a bunch of Chinese nationals that were running a secret police ring throughout New York City to arrest and intimidate Chinese nationals that had visas here. So, and real story. NBC was reporting on it. CBS was reporting on it. One of them actually attempted to assassinate a Chinese national who became a American citizen and was a Democrat politician in the city, and tried to assassinate him because he was a part of the Tiananmen Square protests in the 80s.
Wow.
So it's very serious. And as much as I hate it, I'm still on TikTok. It has to get banned because a lot of people do see the danger of it, but it's so good and no one wants to get rid of it.
They hit a formula, right? And all of the other social media platforms are following it. And that is, the attention span of, modern American or person or whatever, they deliver you a short tidbit of an entertaining video. It's very short. And it's on topic, right? And there's an algorithm. So if you watch something, your eyes are on something a little bit longer, it's going to feed you the next thing that's related to that. So over time, it's going to tune, and then you're going to be really interested in what's going on there. You're going to spend more time. And then the daily data is going to collect about your interests, what you're watching, what other things you're doing, where you're going on your phone.
It's a marketer's wet dream.
It
really is.
But look, everybody now is doing, like we were talking about YouTube Shorts, Facebook Shorts, right? And you'll see those videos. It'll have the TikTok watermark and on other platforms. So creators are just dumping their content everywhere.
Yeah, I mean that's the strategy though. Now with social media marketing, and it's so interesting to see other companies. I embraced it, not regrettably, but begrudgingly embraced it, and AI. And it's got my clients' new business, all my clients and podcasts and social media guys in my network. I get all my guys 40 to 60,000 views a month on YouTube and Instagram. My corporate account has 70,000 impressions a month just because put out reels, optimize your hashtags in your description, use keywords for the platform you're using and hashtags that are trending for the month for that topic on that platform, and use keywords in your description and make them 30-second shorts. That's all you have to do. And a lot of marketing companies haven't caught on to that yet, or they disagree with it out of principle, which I understand, but you're not doing the platform's not optimized for the way it was 5 to 10 years ago.
Right. It's developed rapidly. I mean, as my own personal example, we talk about YouTube, right? And I have not watched linear traditional television in months. I still pay for it, but I haven't watched it in probably over a year. I will just bring up the YouTube app at night and I'll click on the first thing that interests me. And you know what? The next video is of interest to me. And the next video is of interest to me. So I'm watching 15, 20-minute videos on topics of things that I'm interested in, learning about, or even just entertainment, right? It's the same thing. But now you're talking about reels that are like 30 seconds to 2.5 minutes, just shorter and it's rapid. And, tension goes all over the place. Yeah.
And that's what I feel is very, in a way it's concerning because I look at the world and I'm like, I would like to have a more intellectual world. I would like to do this and that. But at the same time, it's also remarkable how much things have changed. And I marvel at it a little bit where it's like everyone wanted to be a gamer, a YouTube game chat.
Yeah.
Yes. And then it shifted to everyone wants to be a podcaster. And this is so much more attainable now than it was when I was growing up and looking at all these streamers back then. It's like you had to be good at video games. You had to have a talent and there had to be a way to do it. And it was just luck. You know what I mean? It was luck and skill. Mm-hmm. Now it's skill, time, and using the tools. And it's a lot more affordable. It's, easier to do. If you have a fun or an interesting or a provocative topic, you can just cut it up into reels using these platforms that are out there. You post once a day, you record 4 times a month, and you're in there. What really is going to come down to it is, do you have the time and do you have the money to dedicate to it? If you have the time to edit it, produce it, and constantly improve it, it's very affordable to do. If you don't have the time for it, then you have to pay someone like myself to do it. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, okay, well, now I have to pay this guy this, and then, blah, blah, blah. But if you are like a solo person and you work a regular job and you have, I don't know, enough to get one camera and, the Rode mic, and that's about maybe $1,500, and then you could put it right on YouTube because you could simulcast to the camera, the audio, you upload it to YouTube, and you're all set. You do basic editing through CapCut or through Adobe Premiere, and your costs are very minimal. So it's very easy. That's why there's such a proliferation of the content too, because there's so many people with great ideas that now can afford to do it if they have the time to, that is. And, fortunately, a lot of people do have time, and they can make a name for themselves. They won't make a living out of it, but they'll make like a nice chunk of change on the side, and they could pay for their meals, or they could pay a utility bill with it, and it helps people.
Sure. I mean, most of the YouTubers I follow, especially since video games and retro tech are my interests, they have full-time jobs. They work 9 to 5, and they do all this stuff as a hobby. And sometimes they do spin it into a career. The 8-Bit guy, right? I watch him a lot.
Yes.
And he, he was working in tech, and, he was just making maybe a really good video a week. And then he saw monetizing. He was able to make it a full-time gig. And that's happened with a lot of the people that I follow. They are able to turn it into a career. Now, however long that career would last, because at the rapid pace of technology and how we are being fed content is changing, right? Reels now, right? Our attention span is getting shorter, right? I'm only going to be interested in content that's less than 2 minutes. I'm not watching 20-minute videos.
No.
I do, but that could be where we're going. We want more content, that's tailored to me, my interests, that I find entertaining, faster, shorter. So spoon feed it to me. So if that's what happens, people making livings, doing stuff like this, is that going to disappear?
Maybe. I mean, that's something that I always throw back and forth with the trends, and, at least from a marketing perspective of people hiring me, it will definitely change.
Yes, it'll change.
It will absolutely change. Just because the demographic's going to change out.
Yeah.
Really. Right. And, what I find interesting, even with with the show, right? Even my clients, the views they get a month are a fraction of what they are with the full videos. I have a client, he gets about 500 to 700 views a video, and his reels get 1,000 to 3,000 a reel. So he's getting 65,000 views a month, and most of it's through reels. And he'll get maybe let's just make it simple. He'll get 4,000 views a month off of his YouTube videos, but he'll get 60,000 out of the reels. And it's just it's just the way it's optimized. So the way that I could see it in the next 5 years, or maybe within the next year, let's just keep it current, is a lot of people that make mock podcasts, and they'll just sit down, they'll write a script out, and they'll really dial in to make that 30 seconds engaging, grabbing you, has a good hook, good topic, and enough to piss you off where it's oh, they ended what they were going to say.
Very much. It's you got my attention now. Now I have to go find and on TikTok, I'm going to say, search for this to find the next for part 2.
Yeah.
I hate that.
I hate that too, but it works.
So you're planning your long form content, and you're creating your short form content inside it.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's what I think a lot of people are going to start doing more of, and really just dialing it in. There's people even I saw this one podcast where it wasn't even a podcast. It was just shorts. And I was trying to find the podcast, and I couldn't find it anywhere, but the shorts had 10, 20,000 views a short. And that's because people were pissed off trying to find it, but they got kicked right back to the next short and the next short and the next short. Now it's oh, well, this is pretty funny. Or you'll see those, I call them, recycle channels, where they'll just take podcast clips and they'll just recycle clips from, they don't even own it. It's not even their podcast.
Yeah, they stealing content.
Stealing content.
Freebooting, right?
And some freebooting. And then there's people like myself, right? Like I've done this a little bit, but I don't know, maybe laziness. I created a bunch of fake accounts to just repost my podcast clips. Just to repost. But the problem is now you got to restart all over again. So it takes time. It's a consistent time-based thing. You got to dump money into it too.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Spend money, make money.
But the way TikTok works is it'll read your face and it'll see like a face that's popular. So say I post on TikTok. Okay. Anthony's posting his face on TikTok. Well, now I make 3 other accounts do the same thing and they're only posting my face. Oh, this guy's pretty popular. His face is not only on here 120 times a month. His face is on here. What's 120 times 4? 540?
480?
480?
500, sure.
500. Let's just say 500. Wow, his face is 500 times a month now from 3 different accounts, combined 500. Okay, let's multiply this because people obviously want to see more of his face. Let's multiply that. So then it gets more traction and it gets more traction and it gets more traction. So it doesn't really work well with Instagram because they have more bot control on Instagram, and more spam control, but TikTok doesn't really have that.
Of course not.
So it's very easy if you know the strat. Now, personally, I don't care to learn the strat on TikTok because I know it's going to get banned. So it's like, why even bother?
Yeah, TikTok. Yeah, and this is just my personal feeling. It's interesting. It's going to go the way of like Vine.
Yes.
The way of like, Snapchat. Like, none of the young people I talk to are like, you Snapchat? Oh, I'm not on that anymore. They move on. So the next social media platform and how they communicate is going to grab them, and we're going to change the way we ingest information, and it's going to be a new thing in the next year or two.
Yeah, and Snapchat is really like for people that have Android. So like I have friends. I used to have an Android, and I have friends on Android. So if you want to talk to them, you use Snapchat because they hate texting on Android. They even hate the green text. They don't even got to deal with it.
Green bubble friends.
Yeah, green bubble friends. Yeah, even they hate that thing. So, you either do that, or if you're doing something you don't want people to know about, or if you want privacy, right? Those are the people that really use Snapchat at this point. Most people use Instagram. Most people use Facebook Messenger, if that, or they just text through iMessage and you make a group chat through there. Yeah. Like my primary form of communication is iMessage. When I had an Android, it was only Snapchat because that was like the next best thing to iMessage.
Yeah, I mean, it's user experience, right?
Yeah.
From a cybersecurity standpoint, look back to that real quick. iPhones are much better than Android, because it's a closed ecosystem. So you can control what's in and out of it. You control what's in the App Store. You control the APIs and the backdoors and everything. So yeah, iMessage and iPhones are very popular, but they're better with protecting you.
Oh yeah. And it used to not be that case. It used to be where it was like, oh, you can't download encrypted software. You can't do this and that. But it changed.
They've gotten better with it.
I remember once the iPhone 10 came out, that was the revolution. Because if you remember, the iPhone 5 to the iPhone 9 were just absolutely horrible. The battery life was terrible. You could not customize it at all. It was actually less secure than some of the Androids at that time. The Google products were actually more secure at the time. And then it flipped with the iPhone 10. Battery life was better. That's when encryption started to be implemented into iMessage. Like it was an experimental feature, I believe. And it just got better. Like the iPhone just got drastically better. Like this is an iPhone 12 and this thing, I got that in 2021 and it's still kicking pretty good. And I still get the encryption updates. Mm-hmm. So they changed their game quick.
They have. As a technologist, I carry both, right?
Right.
Someone will come to me, how do I do this on Android? How do I do it on iOS? So I have to know everything, right? So I flip-flop back and forth. So right now in my pocket, I'm carrying an iPhone 15. My corporate phone is a Galaxy. So, pretty modern.
Nice.
But you're right. It's
S22 or 23?
It's the 10e. So it's like their low flagship line.
I see. I used to rock the Google Pixel.
Oh,
the Pixels were good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had the Pixel 1 and then I had the Pixel 3. The Pixel 2 was not really my type of deal, but they were good phones. And that's, I think the Pixel is the reason that iPhone got their shit together, because they really realized, like, okay, to me, when I was using the Pixel, it was almost comparable to using an iPhone. Google had their own FaceTime version. They had their own messaging version that kind of looked like iPhone. And it was just it was a very similar experience. But I was just like, I had my friends at the time, they were like, yeah, you got to FaceTime us. Just FaceTime. Don't you want FaceTime? Don't you want the bubble? And I was like, you know what? I need something different. What the hell? I had time for an upgrade anyway.
Right.
So I had the free upgrade from Verizon at the time. I was like, yeah, I'll take it. And I've been happier with it. But from a cybersecurity standpoint, yeah, iPhones are much more secure, and it's good that the majority of the population has an iPhone from that point of view. And yeah, it's a brave new world. It's a brave new world, and we need to be secured.
Sure,
you know?
sure. And what it looks like today is not what's going to look like tomorrow. So it's a very rapidly evolving landscape that you have to keep up with. You know, you have to be informed.
At least the Chinese aren't getting into Ring security systems. If there's a Chinese version of security, tell me there's a Chinese version of Ring.
I can't say particularly, but you know, now you get into IoT, you know, Internet of Things. You know, that as itself is a very bad, you know, from a security standpoint, designed system.
Ring?
Not Ring, but, you know, Ring's owned by Amazon, right? But
right.
When I speak about IoT, right, Internet of Things, right? So, you know, let's say you got a coffee pot there, your television, and then like your TV. It's all smart, it's all connected, right? So IoT is just, it's barely enough intelligence to get connected to the internet. Very low security, right? And you constantly hear people, like, you have a camera system at your house, some low end budget kind of thing. There's people getting into it left and right. You know, like, oh, I'm hearing voices over my camera, people talking to me through it. You know, my baby monitor that I bought from this company, there's someone talking to my kid on it. You hear stories about that all the time. And that's because it's low security backdoors. Wise suffered from this not too long ago. Wise makes like those low end security cameras, right? And apparently, like on their main portal, someone's camera feed appeared on almost everybody's portal that wasn't theirs. So it got like interconnected somehow, and it was just a cybersecurity failure. A lot of people freaked out about that.
Yeah.
So
rightfully so.
So IoT is just something you got to be really careful.
Really? So what if you wired your cameras, like you hardwired it to your computer?
That's better. That you know, that'll protect you from, you know, let's say your neighbor getting on your Wi-Fi. You know, everybody's got those flipper devices.
I want one of those so bad.
Yeah, those are fun. You could do a lot of fun, a lot of damage with them. You know, but yeah, I've heard stories of people driving around with them, and they just rock up to someone's house and they scan, see what they can do. Garage doors openers on RF, right? Open your garage door, or they intercept like your Wi-Fi signals and whatnot, and jam it or depeer it or capture it, whatever. They're fun. You could have some interesting times with those.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to get one of those. In Minecraft.
In Minecraft.
In Minecraft. Only in Minecraft.
Their price point is a little bit too high for me right now.
It's like $450 bucks. It's crazy.
But they'll make a clone, you know, using like a APC32 or something, or ESP32, and yeah, the price will come down, or just give it time. But yeah, they're pretty interesting devices.
That's cool. Yeah, I might have to save up for one of those. See, like price point. That's the interesting thing about capitalism. Like this whole setup. Well, if this was the 90s, it would be a radio station. But so it would be millions of dollars, and now everyone can do it. Everyone can do it. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you for coming on the show.
All right.
Pleasure having you.
Anytime.
And thank you for enlightening us. Everyone, thank you again for listening to episode 297 of Backpacking America. Until next time.